all of this feeds into our approach to lead generation. And that's really what I want to talk to you about is not just specific lead generation source, but the philosophical approach to lead generation and the importance of understanding cash conversion cycle, return on investment, and return on time. So here's the deal. When I'm building a team, if all I do is I go for the high ROI lead sources, which are, for example, your sphere of influence, sign calls, those are both pretty easy. I'm going to go after those either way. But pay-per-click is a great return on investment, right? It's very high ROI. What do we also know about pay-per-click? How long does it take to convert pay-per-click? Anybody? I can give you an easier one, Facebook leads. How long does it take to convert the average Facebook lead? It's very high ROI because you get a lot of money back for the money that you invest, but how long does it take to convert them? Jolita says 6 months. I would say, Jolita, you're probably very correct on that on the low end. Eric says 3 to 6 months. And yes, some of them will convert on 3 to 6 months, but interesting, a friend of mine, Gabe Cordova, some of you might know Gabe. Anybody know Gabe Cordova? Raise your hand if you guys know Gabe. Super smart guy, one of the smartest guys in the industry. And Gabe, his best year ever, he did 800 transactions, right? So not bad, right? It's not a slouch. And Gabe and I, we like to tease each other, but one thing that we both are passionate about is this cash conversion cycle. And he did a study about 2 years ago. And he tracked, so he used, at the time, he was the president of FirePoint. And he tracked all of his, and not just across his, but across everybody in FirePoint that was inputting their numbers. They began to track ROI and cash conversion cycle. And what they were looking for is to understand how long does it take before I get my money back on an investment, right? So as an example, like when I buy a house, if I'm buying an investment property, I want to know how long does it take me to get my cash on cash return, right? Well, what they found is with things like realtor.com, which is low ROI, but it's fast cash conversion cycle, it took them about a year to break even on realtor.com. And then they started getting very profitable on it. Most lead sources took anywhere from 14 to 16 months to break even on the lead source before they became profitable. And from the 16-month mark forward, they were extremely profitable on those lead sources. Why am I telling you this? Anyone? Help me out here. What do you guys think? Open up your microphone. I want this to be more mastermind style for a moment. I want you guys to communicate with me here. Why do you think that is, that this is so important?
It's not the best place to put your time in.
So you've got to be very careful where you put your time in. Absolutely. You're right about that. That's a big part of it. And even if it is a good place to put your time in, and it may be a good place to put your time depending on where you're at in your business, right? If I'm a tier 4, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to spend a lot of my time on stuff, right? It makes more sense for me to spend money on leads and on lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion than it does my time. If I'm in tier 1, I have a lot more time than money, but I still have to be very careful about where I spend my time. What else? Oh yeah, look at this. Amanda nails it. Don't give up too early. Dee, I think you were unmuting your microphone. What were you going to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say you gotta make it through the 14 to 16 months.
That's the reason right there. You just nailed it. You've got to be able to make it through that 14 to 16 months, you guys. And this is why when you make that move from tier 1 to tier 2, it's so challenging, because from tier 1 to tier 2, guess what you start doing that you didn't have to do before? You have to start buying leads, not just for you, but for team members. And your team members at best are going to be 80% as good as you and probably 50% as good as you. So their conversion rate's going to be lower. You're spending more money on leads for them and for you, and you have less revenue coming in. Think about this for just a moment. It sucks. Tier 2 is hard. It's the hardest tier out there, period. I'm telling you, it's way harder than tier 1. But on the other side of that, when you get through that 14 to 16 months, what does it look like? Coach Shauna, can you unmute your microphone for a minute? I want to ask you a question because Coach Shauna, and you're in tier 3 right now, is that correct? Coach Shauna's microphone. We're getting in there. Oh, there we go. You're in tier 3, is that right?
I am, yes.
Okay. So true or false? Tier 2 sucks.
Tier 2 sucks, you said?
Is it easier or harder than tier 3? I guess is really what I'm asking.
It's harder.
It's a lot harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
What changed for you when you moved to tier 3?
Just more leverage, more just just got a little easier, but I'm not gonna say tier 3 is the easiest. I'm looking to, get into tier 4.
But what's interesting is in tier 3, it's still challenging, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. True or false, like you're starting to see how things are going to be different when you have fully built out your team.
Absolutely.
Yep. That you guys, I really want you to understand this stuff. Now watch this. Coach Shauna, talk to us about lead generation and the cash conversion cycle. Did you ever feel like, man, I should cancel this lead source, but you hung in there long enough to give it a chance to work and it actually worked?
Oh yeah.
Give us an example of some lead sources that happened with.
So Michael, I'm not really, we do online leads, but I do events and radio. So, radio is one.
So radio is a great example. Okay. Now you started radio earlier than I would normally recommend for most people. Normally we don't recommend radio until tier 4, and frankly, that's the reason why, right? Because it's a very long cash conversion cycle lead source. It's very hard. You have to go ahead.
Well, and I've been doing radio for 11 years. So yep. I started at much before. But so yes, it's one of those ones that I'm like, I'm not really getting a lot of business from this. And that I wanted to say to not do, but I'm so happy that I did continue with doing it for a lot of different reasons. One is it has made me a household name. So a lot of the other things that I do, it adds value to that. But at
love that.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, at first I would tell my reps like, I'm not getting any business from this. I want to cancel. And they were like, no, just stick in there. And I would get business from it, but not the business that I like. But I do now.
So I love where you're going with this. I want you guys to listen very carefully to what she just said. And she's absolutely right. And these are exactly the same results we've seen all across the country with radio. So radio is expensive. It's a long-term commitment. You have to be deeply committed to a single station and stay consistent with a single station over a long period of time. It's a lot like farming. It's really very similar to farming, right? Where it's not going to do jack for you for the first 10 to 12 months. Virtually nothing for the first 10 to 12 months. Would you agree with that, Shauna?
I agree. I mean, it paid for it. I think my first couple years, I got a couple clients that closed from it. So I was like,
kind of broke even.
Yeah.
But what you said was very important. What it does is it makes everything else you're doing work better. Because now when they've heard from you in multiple different ways, you go on that appointment, right? So they got the postcard from you. They saw your Facebook ad. They found you on pay-per-click. They heard you on the radio. They maybe saw a billboard of yours. And all of a sudden now they've engaged with you in all these different ways. That's why you start getting traction with it. But radio in and of itself, it's not like, hey, I'm going to run a Facebook ad, get or pay-per-click ad and get direct response. It's very little direct response for the first year to 2 years, really. Now, 2 or more years into it, you start getting some decent direct response for it because that audience on the radio is just like your farm area, right? They've started to get to know you. You become the household name. And all of a sudden they say, oh, I'm going to give Coach Shauna a call because she's the expert. She knows real estate better than anybody else. So I'm just going to go right to her. She's the best there is. They just assume you are because you're a celebrity now. Now, this is not a tier 1 lead source generally. Go ahead, Shauna, we can add something?
No, I'm laughing because that's what my rep always says is you're a local celebrity. And I'm like, but people tell me that they've had my number in their phone. I always knew I was going to call you. I was just waiting for the right time. And so I do get people that have heard me years ago or, whenever that they definitely say, I always knew I was going to work with you. So yes, I totally agree with what you're saying about, the different lead sources. Sometimes they take 14 to 16 months, but you want to make sure that you're staying in connection with them. That's why follow-up is so important.
And you just nailed it. So that is the short-term answer. So I want to get, and Cindy, yes, it's a long haul business. And the question as to, do you do an 800 number or a local number? Always a local number, if at all possible. Always a local number, if at all possible. So that being said, so when it comes to lead sources in general, you guys, you got to understand that there are things that you can do to generate business today. You have to keep doing those things, even though they're generally harder, even though they're generally more expensive, even though they're generally a pain in the butt. You've got to do those things today while you are developing these other lead sources. And that's why I keep telling you, you have to generate, let's see, who knows? How often do you need to implement a new lead source? Type it into your screen. Let's see who's been paying attention. Let's see who's been taking notes. How often do you have to input or implement one new lead source? Look at this. You guys have been listening. Thank you for that. That is at a bare minimum. All right. I will promise you this. If you will implement, automate, delegate, and eliminate a new lead source every quarter, you will get to the point, and it'll be on a nice pace that won't make you go broke. You will be on a track, and you will get to a point where you will have more leads coming in than you know what to do with. You will have a nice full pipeline of people who are getting constantly nurtured, who are consistently turning into transactions, and your business will flourish. You can't underestimate what you can do over the long haul. But the problem is most people overestimate what they can do in the short term. Stop being dependent on the short term. And the only way you can do that, because here's the thing, a year from now is going to come whether you're ready for it or not. 2 years from now is going to come whether you're ready for it or not. So the key is taking the small steps today that make tomorrow happen, right? That make tomorrow profitable for you. So that means cram people into the top end of the pipeline as fast as you possibly can from all kinds of different lead sources, and then nurture the heck out of them. Now, let's talk about lead follow-up. Actually, let me back up. On the lead generation side, real estate agents, seriously, as a group, suck at lead generation and lead follow-up and lead conversion, right? But what happened was you got realtor.com and Zillow came out and they said, hey, look, we're going to take over the lead generation process for agents, and we're going to sell them these leads. We're just going to do it for them, right? Instead of doing it with them or teaching them how to do it, we're just going to do it for them and charge them a whole bunch of money for it. And agents were all too eager to pay it. Well, that created a bit of a problem for the industry, don't you think? I mean, it solved the problem, but it created other problems, right? And so now what did they implement? Now they said, well, the only thing that agents are worse at than lead generation is what? It's lead follow-up. And that's where OpCity and Zillow Concierge came in. And then guess what they did? They charged us a ton of freaking money for that. And agents are scratching their heads thinking, gosh, I wonder why I'm working twice as hard for so much less money. Well, we're doing it to ourselves, you guys, right? So we've got to figure this out. We've got to get to a point where you learn these skills and you implement these things yourself. So I want you to make sure that as you are implementing all of the different lead sources we talk about, that you blend the mix. So yes, it's okay to have some lead sources where some people do some stuff for you. Yes, you need to have your sphere of influence. That has to be one of them. Yes, you have to go out and you have to do things like Facebook marketing, pay-per-click. And by the way, pay-per-click right now is hot. Like if I could tell you one thing right now, pay-per-click is far better than Facebook marketing right now. It is crushing it right now. The ROI is fantastic. There are very few people doing it at a very high level. All right. And I love it. So, and Coach Shauna, we get it, man. We know it. You're out there making stuff happen. We love you. Coach Shauna's going to have to pop in and out today. She's very busy today. And thank you for that, Coach Shauna. Google pay-per-click. Yes, that's when I say PPC. That's what I'm talking about, D. Thank you for the question. And Google pay-per-click is surprisingly easy. You do not have to be a rocket science to be decent at Google pay-per-click. It's literally as simple as running an ad and picking some keywords that make sense. Now, there's all kinds of ways you can get more scientific about it and you can get better at it. There's lots of classes out there on how to get really strategic with Google pay-per-click and how to understand all the different keywords that make the most sense. But I will tell you this, it's not that hard. And yes, Amanda, would I suggest Google pay-per-click for people in tier 1? That's a good question. I was about to say yes for sure, but let me put it this way. Only if you are already doing the other things that work. And I'll give you an example. I don't think anybody should invest in pay-per-click unless you've got your follow-up dialed in. I'm telling you right now, if your follow-up sucks, don't waste your money on pay-per-click or any other paid lead source for that matter. You've got to dial in your follow-up because no lead source is going to give you everything you want instantly. It's not going to convert for you on its own. You're going to have to do a lot of follow-up. And I'm going to tell you about exactly what to do in a minute. I'm going to give you the dumbed down version of follow-up in a minute. And then Isaiah is going to go deeper on the more sophisticated method of follow-up. Both are great. I would suggest that in tier 1 and 2, I would start with the dumbed down version and just do it. But in terms of pay-per-click, for sure, if you're in tier 2 or higher, you need to be doing pay-per-click. Depending on what you have for a website and your follow-up practices, it could be good for tier 1 as well. particularly if you're in upper tier one. If you're in lower tier one, no, I would not start with pay-per-click. If you're doing fewer than 15 transactions a year, I would not do pay-per-click. Terry, go ahead. What's your question? Go ahead and unmute your microphone if you can. I'd love to hear it verbally.
Would it be better? I'm in tier 2. And I have 2 lead sources. One is for the buy side, and one's for the sell side. So would I do better to add another lead gen or to pay more money? Like I use Boomtown. Would I do better to increase that because it is working well? Or should I go find another source?
First of all, I love your question. It's a very smart question. And the answer is not either or. The answer is both and. So it's kind of like buying rental properties, right? It's, hey, I've got this rental property over here that, breaks even. And I've got this other one up here that makes me $500 a month. Should I sell the one that breaks even and go try and find another one that makes me another $500 a month? No, you keep them both and you go find a new one, right? Because eventually the one that you've got that's breaking even, eventually that one is going to be paid off and you're going to start making money on that, right? So if I've got a lead source, like Boomtown, if you're using Boomtown, and it's bringing me ROI, maybe that ROI is a 3 ROI, right? But it's ROI. And if it's at least 3, I'll keep it. That being said, do I throw more money at it or do I go find a new lead source? The first question you have to ask yourself is, when is the last time I implemented a new lead source? Right? So if I haven't implemented a new lead source in the last 3 months, then yes, I have to go implement another lead source. If I just implemented a new lead source a month ago and I've got this one that's working really well for me, I've got it pretty well dialed in and it's kicking off leads and I can up my spend with them just a little bit to get more leads coming in, then yeah, I will do that. If, however, it has been longer than 3 months since I've implemented a new lead source, then I'm going to first go implement a new lead source and check that out first and make sure that I'm continuing to diversify. Here's part of the reason why. I've seen agents, and I'll use Zillow as an example. I've seen this happen a lot of times where agents are paying. I had one agent back east was paying $15,000 a month to Zillow and had over 300 reviews on Zillow. This agent was told by his rep, hey, have your clients just fill out a review at closing. Take your laptop with you, have them fill it out right there. And so he did that and he ended up with over 300 reviews. And what happened was Zillow decided that, hey, wait a minute, all these reviews came from the same IP address because he was using the same laptop at the same closing attorney. So all the IP addresses were the same. So guess what they did? They deleted all 300 of his reviews and banned him from Zillow for a year and a half. Yeah. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. 61% of his business was coming from Zillow at the time. So you tell me if you should diversify your lead source right now or not.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust Zillow at all.
I wouldn't trust anybody. And I want you to think about this very carefully. I wouldn't trust anybody, period. This is your livelihood we're talking about here. This is the livelihood of your team members we're talking about here. You have to diversify. You cannot put all your eggs in one basket. You are asking for trouble. So, so if you're in tier 2, how many lead sources we talked about yesterday? How many lead sources do you need to have in tier 2? You guys remember? Anybody? Type it in if you remember. And Cindy, I'd love to say lawsuit would work, but here's the reality: lawsuits. There's only 2 people that win in a lawsuit, and that's the 2 attorneys. That's it. And they win big. Trust me on that. They win big. Even when you win the lawsuit, you freaking lose. And look at my example. That's a long story. Anyway, here's the point. You need to have at least, I would say right now, 8 to 10 lead sources, maybe even 15 lead sources in tier 2, but you need to get to 10 as quickly as you possibly can. And I would start with a lot of those referral-based lead sources, right? We talked about a lot of those. If you're in tier 2 and you're doing over 35 transactions a year, it's time to implement things like, I'll give you some examples. Like Ojo. If you haven't checked these out, I'll give you some websites really quick here for some of the referral fee-based lead sources. These are free. You don't have to pay anything to get into these. And you only pay when you get a transaction out of them. So, and it's all going to be clubwealth.com/ and then the name I'm going to give you, right? clubwealth.com/ Ojo, OJO. This is a good one. Expert Home Offers, clubwealth.com/ expert home offers. Agent Machine, clubwealth.com/ agent machine, right? Effective Agents, clubwealth.com/ effective agents. Estately, Homelight, and that's HOMELIGHT. Agent Pronto, Hungry Agent, Fast Expert, Veterans United. Did I go too fast? You guys want me to give you those again? Last time I did this, you guys all said, slow down, you're going too fast. Kelly's like, just put the brakes on, Hellickson. Okay, here we go. I'll go through them one more time. And just remember, it's always clubwealth.com/ and then the name of this company. So Ojo, Expert Home Offers, Agent Machine, Effective Agents, Estately, that's Estately, Homelight, Agent Pronto, Hungry Agent, Fast Expert, and Veterans United. All right. Now, and you can go back through and you can watch this. If you guys didn't get all those down, just jump back into Club Wealth University and you can fast forward to this part of the thing. It's for 42 minutes in to our conversation today. So it should be pretty easy to find. Let's see. Oh, look at this. Lisa, thank you for that. Hold on. Lisa, can you unmute your microphone real quick and share that with us? Lisa, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, share that with us. Seriously, that's awesome.
All right. So during the listing challenge, you gave pretty much the same list. And I signed up with Ojo that same day. And they send you an agreement. And you have to sign the agreement through, I think through DocuSign or something. I signed the agreement. They sent it back. And literally the next day, they actually will transfer the lead to you live. So the lead comes on live and you talk to the lead. And that was about 2 days later, I got that first lead. She has some credit issues, but she's working on that. So every time someone needs to buy or sell in my area, you have to try to be the first one to accept the lead, and they will allow transfer the call to you. So far I've gotten 2 and I'm working with them now. So it works.
I love it. That is fantastic. And you know what I love the most about that? And I hope everybody's listening very carefully here. What I love most about that, Lisa, is you just showed me that you're an implementer. I love that. Hang on, I'm going to hit mute all. I've got somebody else's microphone going here, so I'm just going to hit mute all really quick. But it shows me that you're an implementer. And Lisa, feel free to unmute your microphone if you have anything else to say. I couldn't see whose microphone was chiming in. But you guys, that's the secret to all of this. Now, I see, Curtis, you had mentioned that you weren't doing enough deals for them to accept you. Now, that can vary by area, right? If they've got nobody in your area at all, and they've got referrals in your area, they'll take who they can get. But if they've got, people doing 500 deals a year in your area, and you did 30 deals last year, it's going to be tougher to get in, right? Now, I love that you said that you emailed Chris Heller directly. Chris is actually a good friend of mine. He's the CEO of Ojo, and he used to be the CEO of Keller Williams. Really smart guy, really good guy. If your production is over 35 transactions and you're struggling to get into Ojo, if you did 35 or more transactions last year and you're struggling to get into Ojo, drop Chris a message. If you are a Club Wealth coaching client, if you're in our one-on-one coaching program, then I want you to copy me on that message and I will talk with Chris for you and I will help you get those leads. All right. Any other questions on those referral fee-based lead sources? Dude, these are great leads, you guys.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please. Who is this?
Are you saying you have?
Wait. I can't see you. I can't see you. Who is it?
It's Cindy Case.
Hi, Cindy.
Hey, I'm in the car. I can't.
That's okay. That's all right.
Okay. Are you saying you have to have 35 transactions a year to be able to have Ojo accept you?
Not necessarily, but usually, right? So usually that's their minimum standard. But again, if you're in rural BFE America, and they don't have anybody in your area, then there's a much better chance they'll accept you, even if you're doing fewer than 35 transactions in a year, right? But if you're in Los Angeles, what's that?
What about all the other ones you listed? Do they have similar standards?
Everybody in REO and in these type of lead sources are all going to want to see a minimum standard, right? They're going to all have, and everybody's minimum is different, but usually it's between 25 and 45, usually. So we always say 35 is kind of a good benchmark for the most part. It's not always accurate. And it, again, depends very much on your area. Again, if you're in like Los Angeles, you've got a lot of competition in Los Angeles. They've got 1 million people there doing 100 transactions a year. It's gonna be a lot harder to get accepted to some of these places.
So if I know going in, like I did 2 transactions in the past 6 months, it's $4 million. in gross commissions. So I'm in a higher luxury market.
Yep.
But if I know going in that I don't have the right number of transactions, should I contact you or my coach first before even trying to apply to these companies for leads?
So I'm going to give you the hard truth that nobody's going to tell you. They don't care what your volume is. They care what your transaction count is. And I know that sounds terrible and it's a bummer. And I will tell you this, I get really nervous when somebody is in a luxury market and they did 5 or 10 transactions last year and made a whole bunch of money. Let me tell you why I get nervous about that. Because when the market tightens up, that's the agent whose production drops the fastest, because that market is the most susceptible to market shifts. And it doesn't take missing out on too many transactions to have a major impact on your income. So I want to get your transaction count up right away. I want you guys to write this down. I want you to think about this. What's more important, quantity or quality? Type it into your screen. What do you think is more important, quantity or quality? If you have to choose right now between the two, which do you choose? And I see only one person brave enough to type an answer in. Good for you for typing an answer in, Amanda. And D, and okay, and look at this. Oh, now I'm starting to get some different answers. Now I'm finally getting some diversity in the answers, and it's almost 50-50 now. Here's the answer. In the beginning, you always choose quantity. You will develop quality only as you do quantity. I'll give you an example. Would you rather have an agent that has been in the business for 30 years or an agent who's been in the business for 30 days? Most of you are probably thinking, I want the agent that's been in the business 30 years. Well, what if the agent that's been in the business for 30 years has only done 1 transaction and the agent that's been in the business for 30 days has done 20 transactions? Now, who do you want? Right? So my point is this, as you do more transactions, you learn, you gain experience. Experience is not measured in time in real estate. I don't care. Look, I've been in the business for over 3 decades, literally over 30 years. I've been selling real estate. And guess what? That doesn't mean jack. That doesn't qualify me for anything. What qualifies me is the number of transactions I've done. That's where I learned from. I learned from my mistakes. I learned from our successes. I refined my systems as a result of quantity. So in everything you do right now, guys, you got to start by choosing quantity, and then you got to work really hard to, as quickly as possible, develop the quality. So Cindy, I say that to simply suggest that I don't doubt that you deliver great service. I'll bet you deliver a world-class customer experience, and that's fantastic. And it's important, and you need to continue to do that. I'm very concerned that we got to get your transaction count up, or you're going to struggle in the next 24 months. And it's going to be very hard to get into some of these referral fee-based sources until we get that transaction count up. And some of them we have some sway with, like Ojo's a great example. Like I can call Chris up and he'll, I could dial him up right now and he'll take my call. Even if he's in a meeting, he'll probably take my call, right? Because we've got a great relationship. But actually, that's not true. He's like I am. He won't interrupt a meeting for a call. But I can get him on the phone, is my point. I can't do that with every one of these companies. But even if I can get him on the phone, the first thing he's going to say to me is, Michael, she did 2 transactions in the last 6 months. I get that they're big high-end transactions, but I got to have somebody with more experience than that, is what he's going to say. Does that make sense, Cindy?
Yeah, it does. But in my career, and again, everybody's different here, but in 15 years, I've done 98 transactions, so it's not like I don't have any experience. That's 98 transactions, more than, someone that's done 30 transactions and they're a 1-year agent. My 98 transactions in 15 years is a lot more experience than that. And then my second question, while you got me audible here.
Hang on really quick. Before you go to your second question,
Okay.
Just as an FYI, they don't care what you've done over the 15 years. They care what you've done in the last 12 months. They're always going to look at the last 12 months.
Right.
Just FYI. And the REO companies, the banks and all those guys, they're all the same way. They always look at the last 12 months. So anyway, go ahead. What's your next question? These are great questions, by the way. I'm really glad you're asking these because I guarantee there's other people on the call wondering the same thing.
Yeah. So that's the reality. So my question then is, given me, for example, there's other people maybe like me. If I have the income to buy the pay-per-click leads, even though that would come second, like first should be the free leads, then the next quarter implement pay-per-click is what I wrote, but then given these criteria that I don't meet, should I go ahead and do pay-per-click to try to generate more volume, more quantity in transactions to then be able to implement the others?
Let me share this with you. Just because you might not qualify doesn't mean you shouldn't apply for those referral fee-based lead sources. You should still apply. You never know which one's going to approve you. You have no idea. You never know which one's going to have a need. And these things work just like asset management companies on the REO side. These are relationship-based sources. Now, I know that everybody thinks that it's just some website you put your information in and it's, whoever clicks first and yada, yada, yada. I can tell you for a fact that most of these sources, even though they may have a system where it goes to the first person that clicks on it or whatever, I can tell you that if you are developing a relationship with them, you get to know your rep down there. You send them flowers, you send them a personal note once in a while, you send lunch to their office, you maybe pop by their office if you happen to be in town. I'm telling you, you start really developing those relationships, you will be surprised what will happen. I can tell you for a fact that I know that some of these companies will literally dial your phone before they will dial the rest of the people in the system's phone if they have the relationship with you. They want to give that business to the people they know are going to take care of it. They want to give that business to the people they have a relationship with, that they know they can get on the phone when they need to, have the conversation what they need to, that are going to work with them, they're going to do it the way they want it done. All of that stuff matters. So I would suggest, don't just give up just because you may not have the production level that they really would prefer to see. Give it a shot. You just never know who's going to say, I'll give her a chance. I'll throw her a deal. We'll see how it goes. Right now, when it comes to pay-per-click, should you, if you've got a little bit of cash and you can start buying some leads, yes, you should buy some leads. Should it be pay-per-click? I don't know. And here's the reason I can't say that. I'm not your coach. And the guys that I coach, I'm removed from it quite a bit, right? Like all the guys I coach or people that I coach, they actually, I think most of the people I'm coaching right now personally are all guys, but the people that I coach pretty much all do 500 transactions a year or more. And so I'm talking with them about very different strategies. If you're in tier 2, you need Coach Shauna as your coach, right? That's what, so it's because she's in tier 3. So she just came through tier 2. She knows better than I do. And by the way, your coach will look deep into your lead stack and understand what lead sources you're using. And they'll understand your business and they'll understand your finances better than I can on a call like this. And they will tell you based on all of that and based on your personality type and what you're likely to do and not likely to do, they'll be able to tell you better than I can what lead sources are going to be the best for you. So it's a much deeper conversation. And you guys, I want all of you to listen to this very carefully because all of these factors impact which lead sources you should be implementing. And the only person really qualified to tell you that is one of our coaches who's at the tier right above you. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Cindy, was that helpful at all? Did that help you just a little bit? Cindy's like, I'm not unmuting my microphone anymore. That guy scares me.
Yes. I had to find it. That was helpful. And yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Now, here's what I would suggest to you. Let's talk about budget really quick. Let's talk about lead generation budget. How much should I spend on lead generation? What do you guys think? It depends on how fast you want to grow. If you want to maintain where you're at, I want to see you spending at least 10% of your gross revenue on lead generation. 10%. If you want to grow, I have seen as much as 25%. I would recommend that you not spend more than 25% of your revenue on lead generation, unless it's a straight up referral, right? If it's an agent to agent referral or some other referral source that has a referral fee. And some of the referral fees, they're getting expensive now, right? So, especially if it's a listing, they could be 25 to 45%. You're going to see Realtor.com and Zillow. I guarantee, mark my words, you're going to see them go to 55% referral fee. Guarantee it. It's coming. There's already relocation companies out there doing it right now. Now, if it's a seller, is it worth it? Let's back up. Would I pay a 55% referral fee for a buyer? What do you think? Probably not. Probably not. Really depends on where my business is at and where I'm at, right? If I'm really kind of hard up and I really need to get some cash coming in, then yeah, I'd take that one. But if I'm cruising and I've got some good lead sources in place, then I probably don't need to spend 55% on it. I might not. Especially if it's like a relocation company, but it depends on my relationship with that relocation company. If I'm getting seller leads out of them too, I might have to suck it up on the buyer lead side, take one for the team, so to speak, in order to get those listings. Would I pay 55% for a listing lead? All day long. Why? because of all the other business that can bring me. And Eric, it's interesting you mentioned high end. Let's talk about that for just a second, guys. What do I prefer? Would I rather have luxury business, or would I rather have, let's say first time or move up buyer business? I'll tell you this, I want the mainstream first, move up or first time buyer business. I really prefer the move up stuff. Like, somebody's moving up from their first house they purchased. That's the perfect price point to be in, right? Because now they got to buy and they got a house to sell. Coach Shauna is having really good success with that right now. You heard her talk about it yesterday. The problem with luxury is that it's a much more sporadic market. It's much more susceptible to market changes. And I'm not saying don't do luxury. I love luxury, but I didn't do a lot of it. Why didn't I do a lot of it? Because I found it a lot easier to do 10 transactions at $400,000 than it was to do 2 transactions at $2 million. It was a lot easier. And not only that, now I have 10 referral sources instead of 4, right? All right. Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, let's go to lead follow-up really quick, and unless there's other questions. So lead follow-up, I'm going to give you the quick and dirty on leads follow-up, and then we're going to bring Isaiah on, and he's going to talk about really how to go deep on lead follow-up. So if you do nothing else, you have to follow up with your leads. I've got people in Club Wealth right now that literally have 15, 20, 40,000 people in their pond of leads. And you know what they do? They have very sophisticated, oftentimes, follow-up systems in place, but that's not how they got there. You know how they really make a ton of money? It's by doing the basics. The way I was making the money I was making was by following the rule of 3. Does anybody know what the Club Wealth rule of 3 is? Can anybody share that with us? I see some smiles. I'm seeing some people that maybe know. If you think you know, open up your microphone. It's okay if you don't get it exactly right. Don't feel bad. Even if you know a little bit, you know more than most. Anybody?
3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the first 3 weeks, and 3 times a month for the next 3 months.
I freaking love you, Stephen. Not only were you close, you nailed it. That is exactly it. That's it. You guys, if all you did was that, if all you did was follow up with people 3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks, 3 times a month for the next 3 months, and you did it in 6 different ways, which I'll tell you in just a moment. If that's all you did, I will promise you this. You are going to not only move the needle, but you are going to close a ton of business. And you know what? Most agents give up after the first or second call. More than 50% of agents fail to make more than 3 calls, more than 50%. So if you want to eliminate 50% of your competition, make more than 3 calls. And did you know that the vast majority, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's something like 80 or 90%, the vast majority of leads don't convert until the 8th to the 12th contact. 8th to the 12th contact. Now, did you hear the word contact? That's not call, that's contact. How many calls does it take to get a contact? You guys, this is a contact sport. You've got to be aggressive about your follow-up, right? And I will tell you this, we follow up tenaciously with people. When someone joins our Facebook group, we contact them, guess what? 3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks, 3 times a month for the next 3 months, and we offer them a free strategy session with Club Wealth. Guess how many people complain about it? Guess how many complaints I get? Because the first thing that happens when I tell people about this follow-up system, they think, oh, I'm going to just be pissing everybody off, and they're going to be mad at me, and I'm going to have all these upset people, and they're not going to do business with me. First of all, if they're that guy, they're not doing business with you anyway. I got news for you. And by the way, you don't want to do business with that guy. Screw that guy. He's not your client anyway. But you know what? More often than not, what happens is the people that you do want to do business with, they forget about you. They ignore your message. They ignore your call, not because they don't like you, not because they're not interested in working with you, just because it's not time for them right now. It's not what they need this moment, right? So don't stress out about that. I can tell you that today, this morning, for the first time in as long as I can remember, and I'll tell you, the last time I had anybody complain about this had to at least be 6 months ago or more. For the first time today, in a Facebook group, I saw somebody post a comment about, there was like 90 plus comments about how great, somebody asked about, has anybody worked with Club Wealth? And there was like over 90 comments of people going into a diatribe about what they loved about Club Wealth and coaching with us and all this. And there was this one Lone Ranger that went in there and said, well, I joined their Facebook group but by golly, they just harassed me for a week and I'll never make that mistake again. Man, thank you for saving us the time of doing business with you, because you're the kind of person that signs up and quits in 30 days because you're not rich yet. Like, thank you for saving us the hassle. I want you to think about this with your lead follow-up, you guys. Isaiah, you look like you're getting ready to add something. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought. But yeah, I definitely have a lot to add to that. But
I mean, it's just, you guys,
yeah,
you are not going to lose long-term if you over communicate. You will lose every time if you under communicate.
yes. You will go broke if you under communicate.
That's right. Go ahead, Isaiah, hit it.
Yeah, so I loved what you were saying, and I have a graph to kind of back up what the exact stats that Michael was talking about in the playbook. So if you get, can you see my screen? Okay.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah. So this is exactly what Michael was talking about, and this is where this is the point of entry where a new lead comes in, and like Michael was just saying, 50% of all agents they just stop after the first contact. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you have a team, I want you to think about this. Probably could be happening on your team too, right? If with your leads on your team, you want to check in on this and be monitoring this in a big way. We're going to do a whole training on this. I just want to give them a quick glimpse. And then, and if you look here, you can beat out almost 90% of your competition just by making sure you contact the lead 4 times. You can beat out almost all your competition. So Michael's system is so on point, and we've tracked this. We have the privilege of seeing data from a very, very high level and all over the country, and see how agents work their data, because we essentially, at our core, we're a database management company. And so right now, currently, actively, we manage around 20 million pieces of data. And so we can see the trends and we can study it. We can see what's converting and what's not. And also, because we have a lot of ISAs working, these trends are like right on point. That 8 to 12, like Michael said, that 8 to 12 contacts to convert, it's where the magic happens right here. And that's where, from me, like, I'll just be transparent with everybody. I was doing well in business, but where I really started taking off was fixing this part of our sales and marketing process. Is where when we saw a 30% increase in business just from fixing this. 30% increase.
Now think about that for a second. I want you guys to just do some quick math in your head. How much money did you make last year? What was your total gross commission income last year? Now take that number, grab a calculator, use your phone's got a calc on it if you need to use that. Take that number and add 30 and just multiply it by 30%.
Not spending any extra money, by the way.
Not a dime. It's a little bit of time, right? So you can put some effort in, but all of a sudden you can access an additional 30% above and beyond what you made last year and do nothing else different. Look, if that's all you get out of this entire event, that one thing right there is huge money to you. And Isaiah, I love the way the chart here shows. What the heck do you say to someone 12 times? Oh my gosh, Cindy, I love you. You are asking the perfect question. So I created a script about, I don't know. And I say I created it. I don't know who actually invented it. And maybe it was me, maybe it was somebody else. I don't know, but I started using it over 20 years ago. And it is so easy and so simple. Every time I call, I say the same thing. Hey, Isaiah, it's Michael Hellickson with Club Wealth. Hey, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't dropping the ball on my end. How are things going? Are you thinking about buying or selling still? That's literally like what you say. All you got to start off with is, I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on my end. What you say after that really doesn't matter. I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on mine. Because what that does is it positions you, instead of being that person who's like this sleazy salesperson who just wants their freaking money. Instead, you're positioning yourself now as a servant who cares. And isn't that a better way to be positioned?
Oh yeah.
Right? And it's easy. And nobody gets mad at that. And you know what they normally say? This is the best part. They normally say, oh, no, it's not you, Michael. It's me. It's like that girl in high school, right, Isaiah?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a good looking guy. You've never experienced that, but I experienced that a lot. I'm just saying. But literally, you guys, they're very grateful at that point. It's a very different conversation at that point. Now, there's 6 ways that I want you to contact them. All right. And I'm gonna give you some insight here that Isaiah will be able to give you some actual numbers around, most likely. But I'm gonna give you a little insight that it doesn't matter which you do, as long as you do as many of them as possible. And whenever possible, you do the one that they respond to you in. So if they contact you via text message, guess what? They want a text message, right? If they contact you in a text message, you give them a phone call, what happens? They're expecting a text message, you're incongruent, right? You're out of alignment with them in that moment. But if I text them first, and this is the piece that we've been learning, especially over the last 12 months, if we text them first, we get if they came to us via text message or via Facebook message, for example, if we Facebook message them first, so we respond to them in their way first, we get a higher contact rate than if we do something outside of that. Now, that being said, this is not to give you an excuse not to make phone calls. You still got to make the phone calls. So here's the 6 ways: phone, text, email, video text, video email, and my personal favorite, Facebook stalking. Yes, I want you to be a Facebook stalker. You probably heard me say this before, but stalking used to be a 3 to 5 year sentence. Now it's a 6-figure income. Think about that for a second. All right. That's terrible. I'm going to heck for saying that, right? All right. So, but very seriously, you're going to have to Facebook stalk them, guys. You got to, and not only that, I'll give you a perfect example. One of our best sales guys is David Walker, right? He's on our team. He was on my team as a real estate agent too. He's one of my listing agents. You probably heard me talking about him before. And David, he does this better than anybody. When he gets on a call with somebody, the first thing he does is he pulls up their Facebook and he stalks them. And I remember this one particular incident. He was on a phone call with a real estate agent. So he's now calling for Club Wealth, right? And he's one of our ISAs. So he was talking to this real estate agent, and she on her Facebook had been bragging about this macaroni and cheese that she made from scratch. And David likes food like most of us do, and in particular, really, really, really likes macaroni and cheese. And so David gets into this conversation with her about macaroni and cheese and goes nuts about how wonderful her, and he's like, hey, now, I don't want to sound weird here or anything like that. And forgive me if it sounds like I'm stalking you on Facebook, but I thought while we were talking, I just could, check you out on Facebook really quick. And I noticed that you like macaroni and cheese too. And she starts being excited. I do like macaroni and cheese. And I made this great mac and cheese from scratch. He's like, I know, I'm looking at the post right now. And let me tell you, these two got into this conversation. It was hilarious. And guess who signed up for coaching? Right? Mm-hmm. So where am I going with this? You guys need to connect with people, right? The whole point is to build the relationship. When you connect with people and you really care about people, think about this. If all he had done was call her up and say, yeah, let's, what's it going to take to get you into a coaching relationship today, right? Like, come on, really? That cheesy garbage isn't going to work, right? But he actually cared about her and he was having fun with it and she was having fun with it. And guess what? Do people buy on logic or do they buy on emotion? Type it into your screen right now. Logic or emotion? Type it in. Come on, let's go. Type it in your screen. Emotion. Do they buy on emotion or on logic? You nailed it. It's emotion every freaking time. Well, guess what? If you want people to feel emotion, they have to feel something. How do I get them to feel something? Build rapport through the follow-up process. And guess what? You'll start to get to know. A perfect example, when I was listing homes, I was doing 50 to 75 listings a month, not counting REO, not counting my team. You know my secret to that is that I made 115 to 125 follow-up calls per day. Follow-up calls. And you know what happened on those follow-up calls? I'd find things out like, I had one guy, it's funny that I even remember this story, but it was years ago. This is probably 20 years ago. I had this guy and he couldn't make his appointment. We had an appointment scheduled and he had to cancel his appointment. I was calling to follow up on the appointment and he couldn't make the appointment because his daughter was going to be coming back from college or something like that. And she had a challenge going on. So guess what I did? I rescheduled and then I called him up ahead of time and I said, hey man, I just wanted to see how your daughter was doing, make sure we're still good to go for our appointment. And he was super glad I called and he's super glad I remembered his daughter and I listed his house. And when I walked through the door, I didn't need to say anything. All I had to do was hand him the contract. I did say something. I went through my process, but my point is it wouldn't have mattered. He was sold before I got there. And the reason he was sold before I got there is because we built a relationship. All right. That being said, that's the simple version. That's the dumbed down version of follow-up 3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks, 3 times a month for the next 3 months. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to ask me questions on that. Then I'm turning it over to Isaiah so he can go deep on the very sophisticated way of doing lead follow-up, which, and by the way, it's so much easier today, but what he's going to share with you is not an excuse not to also make calls. It's not an excuse to automate everything and not do anything personally. It's just going to augment what you're going to do and take it to the next level, right? And so that's where you start really seeing an increase in conversion numbers. If I had that technology 10 years ago, man, I could have blown the numbers off my numbers. All right. So any question? Okay. So we got, I'm gonna go. Okay. First of all, Campbell Haig just joined us. Campbell freaking Haig. How in the world?
Hello, Michael. Hey, quick
up?
question for you.
Yes.
With
please.
your lead sources that you talked about, what would be the best lead source? I've already got the Z buyer. What would be the one that you would recommend in addition to that?
Okay, so it's Campbell. Here's what I'm going to do. Hang on really quick. Hold on. I got Megatron talking right now, but
40, 50 transactions a year.
That's my robot impression. Wasn't very good. Okay, Campbell, I turned off your video because your internet was like dial-up, like Coach Luigi's. Can you do say that one more time? So you want to know, if I understand correctly, you have Z buyer, so leads like candy right now, right? And you want to know what's the bestseller lead source once you're good at leads like candy? Is that right?
Yep, I'm good at leads like candy. What would be the next one to add?
Trigger listings.
Trigger listing. Okay, thank you, sir.
But I want to be very clear with everybody watching right now. Do not go get trigger listings until and unless you are already good at leads like candy. And here's why. Leads like candy is a lot more affordable than trigger listings. And so you need to kind of cut your teeth on leads like candy for seller leads. When you get really good at that, then you can go buy the trigger listings. But trigger listings could be $400 or $500 a lead. The difference is you're going to convert, like I've got clients that literally convert 3/4 of those to either a transaction or a listing. And when I say a transaction, I've got clients that both sell real estate and invest in real estate. And those guys with those trigger listings are buying a lot of those houses. And the ones they don't buy, they list. And so that's the one, trigger listings. Great questions, Campbell.
I have a question. So rule of 3, is that until you get a hold of a lead, you call them 3 times a day and for 3 days and so on, or
sorry, I haven't changed the
okay,
question.
so
That's why I'm on.
Oh, hang on one second here. Let me hit mute all, and there we go. Okay, so D, first and foremost, can you tell me where's that awesome accent from? I want to say it's from Poland, but I could be wrong. Tell me where that accent's from. You got to unmute though. You're gonna have to hit unmute.
Okay, very close, Croatia.
It's Croatia. I almost got arrested in Croatia one time. I'll tell you about it another time. Yeah, very interesting, right?
Why?
Yeah, I was in Zagreb actually, and I was defending a girl's honor. We'll put it that way. And yeah, anyway, from a police officer. Yeah, not a good move. All right. Anyway, long story short, yeah, right. Croatia, crazy place. All right. So the short answer is yes. It stops as soon as you have contacted that person. You now switch to a specific lead generation follow-up program based on their individual needs, right? So you make a judgment call at that point based on your conversation with them as to when you're going to follow up with them next. I will tell you this though, never longer than 60 days, ever, never longer than 60 days. And whatever time they give you, if they say, well, we're not really ready to buy for a year, right? Well, I'm cutting that in half, right? And I'm going to call them in 6 months. Every time you cut whatever they say in half, and that's when you follow up with them. Now, with the 60-day thing, my follow-up might not be specific to, and it probably isn't specific to, are you ready to do something yet? In 60 days, and sometime in the next 60 days, I got to make sure I'm going to follow up with them to say, hey, I was just thinking about you. I'm having this really cool client event coming up, and I just want to see if you want to come out and have a burger on me, right? So it's not going to be follow-up because they're thinking about doing something. It's going to be just a warm touch, voice to voice. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
Again, building the relationship. Huge. Cannot say that enough.